Three things we learned from our conversation with Salone. Number one, applied game mechanics has been the secret sauce behind some of the most widely used apps, including Facebook and Instagram.
People don't realize this, but gaming is actually mainstream. It's everywhere in our daily lives, right? There is a reason why it's a $300 billion, gorilla in the media and entertainment industry. And this has largely been because of two things. One is this technology paradigm, which has essentially made computing power happen in the palm of your hand, right? And the second has been just the demographics. You've got a digitally native demographic who has now really grown up with interactive touch points. Your chat comes from the early days of 4chan, right? Your virtual gifts or these emoji sticker packs were all these digital badges that were very ever present in the 80s and 90s game worlds, right? Your leaderboards and progression and streaks that you now see, your spin the wheel game mechanics that have become so common in your cred, or the mechanics which are used by a Duolingo or a Robinhood, all of these are ultimately game mechanics, right? You had Instagram was Mafia Wars meets Foursquare. Slack was actually an online MMO called Glitch, right? So the genesis of all of these consumer-facing apps, which are essentially create a dopamine hit, or it is a culture of collaboration that it wants to proclaim, or the kind of achievement or validation, social validation that it provides you. All of these are essentially game mechanics.
Number two, recent regulatory actions like the 28% GST has cast a shadow over the gaming industry. But real money gaming, who's most affected, accounts for about 50% of the market. There is still room to innovate across the spectrum in the gaming industry.
We've put out a public statement around that. It is this the 28% is, of course, impacting several of these companies quite adversely. I think what is currently underway and under abeyance is the retrospective taxation, right? But look, ultimately for us, the way we have looked at the sector has always been that, real money gaming is a smaller slice of the larger market, right? If we were to look at the way the market is sliced currently, there's a lot of misconception that RMG is 100% of the market. Of the India market.
Right. But it's more than 50%, right?
It's around 50%.
Right.
But it's not 100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that 50%, if you're a challenger startup, what are the odds of you achieving any kind of disruption within that space when there were already very large incumbents in place, which was already heavily venture capitalized? So to some extent, it was a red ocean in any case. Right? So for us, either way, we've always said that the pie of what India gaming is going to look like 10 years from now, very different from what the India gaming scene looks like today.
Number three, for us as India to build big gaming companies out of here, founders will need to partner with the right strategic and tactical partners going forward.
Gaming companies, especially globally, have learned to navigate that, right? When you have large gaming companies which are, have very large profit pools, they find ways to become net positive for the ecosystem at large. For example, Supercell is a great example, right? It's a company which makes $3 billion in revenue and $1 billion in free cash flow. And those are businesses which have learned over time to be able to start saying, how do we give back to society, right? Similarly, if we look back in the last 2 decades of businesses, large businesses which have set up, they have realized that they need to work in tow with the regulation and work in tow with society in order to be able to grow those. When you're pioneering a new industry, there is always a lot of education. There is always a lot of evangelization. And at the same time, there is always a lot of, giving back to the social ecosystem that needs to be partaken. Anything large that has to be built under the ambit of law. And eventually, what does innovation, what do consumer interests want? How does the consumer evolve in terms of its preferences? Over the next 3, 5, 7, 10 years, the user is becoming different, right?